If you followed the NBA at all this season, you know that the Lakers season has gone completely off the rails to the point now where Anthony Davis trade rumors are actively swirling around the team. Teams that he could go to, why it would make sense for the Lakers to trade him away, and that's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. Really quickly though, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, SeatGeek. Now SeatGeek already does a great job of getting you the best deal on your tickets, and they want to make that even easier for you as well. You can use code SPORTING, there's a link in the description, and you can use code SPORTING at SeatGeek for $20 off your first purchase to an event. Again, that is code SPORTING, and the link is down in the description. Now, apart from the discount, there's a ton of other things to love about SeatGeek as well. They want to make everything super simple on you so you can just go ahead and enjoy going to your event. And if you're looking for the best deal, SeatGeek is the place to be. They're going to go ahead and tell you, you can see right here, they're going to go ahead and tell you where the best deals are in the arena for whatever event you want to go to. I just recently went to an Orlando versus Dallas game the other day, and they did a great job of telling me exactly where my seats were going to be. I can see the picture, and I didn't have to do all this research. I could just enjoy going to the event. And that's really what you want. You want simplicity. All you have to do is look on the app. If it's green, it's a good deal. If it's red, it's not, and you can see exactly what you're getting in those seats. And like I said, I just went to a basketball game the other day using SeatGeek, but it's for a variety of different events, whether it be football, whether it be a concert, any different thing you want to look at. SeatGeek has a great opportunity for you to find some good seats and make it super easy as well. So again, if you want to use that promo code, it's down in the description. You can click the link. You can use code SPORTING at SeatGeek. $20 off your first purchase of a ticket to an event on SeatGeek. And thank you again to SeatGeek for sponsoring this video. So there's a couple of different angles to cover here as it relates to Anthony Davis trades before we get to actual fake trades later in the video. So why would they do this? Like, what's the reasoning here? Well, basically this would be, waving the white flag on the Lakers season in one of two ways. Either the end of the LeBron era in LA and looking to trade him as well during the offseason, and or restructuring the roster in a way that provides them flexibility into the future with cap space and picks and things like that in a way that they can continue to build around LeBron for the next couple of seasons and try and build a roster that is much more well-rounded rather than the version that they have right now that is very centered around two, maybe three guys. And on the surface, like, a lot of that does make sense, right? Maybe it's time to just call it on the LeBron AD era. Like, you won a title. It's been a very up and down era apart from that 2020 run in the bubble. And Anthony Davis has just not looked the same in a Lakers uniform really over the past really since the bubble season. When you go back and look at what Anthony Davis did as a Pelican in New Orleans, he was, in terms of like all the advanced numbers, loved Anthony Davis. He was an incredible player in terms of impact on the floor, both ends of the floor. He could shoot a little bit. He continued to grow and add to his game every single year. And that's the guy that the Lakers traded for, was a guy that people saw as an MVP caliber player, a top 5, top 7 player in the entire league. And then when they went to the bubble in 2020, he showed the entire package, especially in the finals. I mean, he was making threes. His jump shot efficiency was as good as it's ever been. He was an incredible player, just in terms of his overall impact. And like, it was clear, okay, this guy is next, right? Like, he's going to carry the torch. LeBron's, responsibilities, especially offensively, are going to start to decrease, and the Lakers are going to be Anthony Davis's team, and he's going to be the guy that kind of bridges the gap between the LeBron era and whatever comes next. And that's where we all stood in 2020. And ever since then, whether it be because of injuries or a variety of different things, he's just not looked like the same guy. And statistically, there's still a lot of really good things that Anthony Davis is doing, but he's just not the same level of impact guy. Ever since the bubble in 2020, he has not been remotely as good of a jump shooter, and it's limited the other parts of his game. He hasn't been able to get to the rim as well. Defensively, he's looked a little bit, he's looked like he's been a step slow as well. And even though overall there's a lot of good things to like about how the Lakers are playing defensively to begin this season, offensively, they're just not doing enough in terms of creation, in terms of playmaking, in terms of overall scoring. And Anthony Davis is just not the guy that they thought that they had 2 years ago. When you look at the roster, if he's not going to be like an MVP level guy, and LeBron isn't going to be either, there's no path here for this team to be a contender. There's no path to them being, anything other than a play-in team. And if that's the case, you have to start evaluating other options. You have to start looking at, okay, if we're not like a Russell Westbrook and 2 picks for Buddy Hield and Miles Turner trade away, which I don't think they are, then we have to start looking at other things. Like, we can't just continue to reset this year after year and hope that things are going to be different, which leads us to the possibility of an Anthony Davis trade. And again, that path would be either to trade him for pieces and picks so that they can continue to retool the roster around LeBron, or LeBron can't be traded this year, but he can be traded in the offseason. You trade AD, you trade LeBron, and you completely run it back despite owing some future picks to some other teams. And when you start thinking about that, you start thinking, okay, well, where could Anthony Davis potentially be moved to? And there's a variety of different interesting options here. Even if you don't think they're all that realistic, even if you're not buying into the Anthony Davis trade stuff right now, there certainly are some interesting places he could end up. So let's start in Phoenix. Now, Phoenix has been really good to begin the season, and there's not necessarily a reason for them to change things, but I think even the version of Anthony Davis that we have now is an upgrade over someone like DeAndre Ayton, who they had issues in terms of, whether or not he wanted to still be there. It was just a very dramatic situation over the summer, and DeAndre Ayton is a guy that that maybe they could be looking to move, right? So in this scenario, it'd be Anthony Davis going to Phoenix in exchange for DeAndre Ayton, Cameron Johnson, and a first-round pick. And if you're the Lakers, Cam Johnson gives you shooting, which you desperately need. They're the worst spacing team in the entire league. And Ayton is a younger version of what maybe you hope that Anthony Davis could be for this roster, and you get the future pick as well. It allows you a little bit more flexibility. It allows you a more well-rounded roster. And obviously, Ayton is not what Davis is, even this version of Davis. But if you're looking at potentially, moving LeBron in the offseason or keeping him, either way, this option provides you a lot of flexibility. And for Phoenix, yes, you're giving up a wing that is important to you in Cam Johnson, and you're giving up a pick. However, the upgrade of Anthony Davis compared to DeAndre Ayton might be what you need to get you over the hump. This is a team that made the finals 2 years ago. This is a team that won 60 plus games last year, but lost a terrible series to Dallas in the postseason last year. And if you need one more little bump, right? Like if this is truly the last stand for Chris Paul in terms of his age and for this roster and whatever you want it to be, as good as DeAndre Ayton has been at times for you, offensively, Anthony Davis is just a different level of a threat, and versatility wise, he can just do so much more for you defensively. And that's an option I would expect them to look at if Anthony Davis truly comes available. Next up, of course, anytime you're talking about big time star trades, the New York Knicks have to be mentioned. In this scenario, the Knicks get Anthony Davis in exchange for Mitchell Robinson, RJ Barrett, and some future picks. They have picks from a variety of different teams. You can see them on screen with a variety of different protections. And again, the concept here is if you're the Lakers, this is a little bit more of a tear it down situation, right? Like you've got RJ to build around, Mitchell Robinson to be the 5, and you've got some future picks. You trade LeBron for some other stuff in the offseason, and you move forward from there. This isn't as much of a like maybe we can be good still with LeBron on the roster type deal. This is very much a like tear it down, get some future picks type of deal. And for the Knicks, the value here is obvious, right? You trade RJ, you have Jalen Brunson, you have Julius Randle, you bring in Anthony Davis, and you have the opportunity still moving forward to add some other guys, whether it be free agency or maybe another big trade out there. And having a big time star, a guy that even though Anthony Davis is not the same level of guy, still could be, an all NBA caliber player moving forward. That's exactly the kind of guy that the Knicks have been wanting to bring in. It was very evident based off their conversations and bringing in Donovan Mitchell this past offseason, and they have the assets to make it work if it's something that they wanted to do. Another team that you could mention here would be the New Orleans Pelicans, and it's weird that you would even consider the Pelicans here, but if you just take away the name of the team, like Anthony Davis certainly could end up there, and they're a very interesting up and coming Western Conference team. It's unlikely, obviously, that he would end up being sent back to New Orleans, but just in terms of their roster construction, they would be a team to keep an eye on. In this case, they're getting, the Lakers are getting Jonas Valanciunas, Jackson Hayes, Kyra Lewis, Trey Murphy, Dyson Daniels, and a first. That's the most that any team has given up in any of these trade packages, certainly in terms of players, and then of course in terms of young players and assets. But again, this would be a break it down, let's get all these different guys, basically reversing the initial Anthony Davis trade, except with less draft picks involved. And for New Orleans, it is a very, very big step up in terms of top end level talent. You're looking at Zion, Brandon Ingram, Anthony Davis, like that, CJ McCollum. That's a really, really interesting group that you're putting together there. And again, realistically, it's not going to happen. New Orleans is not going to trade for Anthony Davis, but just in terms of the assets, there is something there that makes sense. And then one other team kind of in that similar kind of model alongside New Orleans would be Memphis. In this scenario, they're getting Anthony Davis in exchange for Dillon Brooks, Jaren Jackson Jr., and some future picks. Desmond Bane's not involved here because I think Desmond Bane is that kind of valuable to Memphis. He's a perfect fit alongside Ja Morant, and I don't think that they would really entertain like Jaren Jackson and Desmond Bane in exchange for Anthony Davis. I think they would rather just keep those guys. But given the injury issues that Jaren Jackson Jr. has had, and the fact that I think Dillon Brooks has a bit of a complicated relationship, certainly with that fan base, it's just a weird situation for Dillon Brooks. Desmond Bane is just a better player than him, and they wouldn't really lose too much by sending him than Jaren Jackson Jr. away and some future picks while getting, the star level power of Anthony Davis. Now, ultimately where I've landed here in evaluating all these different trade destinations and trade rumors and trying to figure out what's going to happen with Anthony Davis is it's a really difficult situation to actually make happen. Like, it's nice to talk about in theory, and it's nice to kind of throw that out there in place of potentially a Russell Westbrook trade, but he's a guy that's going to be a free agent 2 seasons and is going to need a big contract at that point and is getting older and has had all these injury issues. And it's a guy that, if the Lakers tried to trade him right after the 2020 bubble, like the value would have been immense, right? But that value is certainly decreased now to the point where does it really make sense for them to move him? Yes, they'll get value, but would they even get as much value as we're talking about here? I understand that this is Anthony Davis, but again, a guy that has dealt with injury issues and someone that if you're, for example, Memphis or obviously New Orleans, you have no idea if he's going to re-sign with you in a couple of seasons. And that's a big part of this equation. And to me, it feels very far-fetched and it feels unrealistic. And the path for the Lakers still seems to be, at least publicly, that they're going to try and make some moves around the edges. Maybe they do the Russ thing, maybe they don't, and try and do this in a realistic way rather than just break everything down and trade Anthony Davis and LeBron. Even though I think you could very easily argue that even given some of the picks that they own in the future, that the best thing for them to do basketball-wise would be to trade Davis and trade LeBron and trade Russ and become, a completely different style of team, that this era has passed them by and that they got their title and that everything since then has been kind of a disaster, I think it's pretty easy to make that argument. I don't necessarily think that's what the Lakers will actually do in reality. Now, obviously, as we know in the NBA, things can always change. The Lakers can always turn their season around. Maybe they make the Russ move and that completely, changes their roster in a way that makes them semi-contenders again. Someone could get hurt. Like a variety of different things can happen here. But I think ultimately where I've landed is, even though there actually are kind of a lot of destinations for Anthony Davis from a basketball perspective that could use him and that could, get together the assets to make a move that would interest the Lakers, I don't think the Lakers are quite at the point of completely breaking this down and moving on from the Davis and LeBron era. And I think the ability to trade for him in terms of upcoming free agency in a couple of years and the destination you would want to go to and the injuries and the age and all that different stuff, the declining play of Anthony Davis, I think all those factors just make this a little bit too complicated of a situation to feel all that realistic right now. But things could always change, and we certainly could have an Anthony Davis trade before the deadline this season.